for me, with working with her, I remember the thing that blew my mind that seems simple, but I thought it was a tall order, is when my character brings Allie, the character she plays, on stage for the first time. I truly believe that that person had never been on a stage before. And I remember thinking, how is she pulling this off? That I actually believe on every level, as the director, as the character, that this person has never been in front of 20,000 people before.
Yeah.
That was really kind of mind-blowing. I haven't seen you since Los Angeles.
No,
maybe it was like a year and a half ago.
When was that?
And the pandemic hit.
Did we know it was coming? We didn't know, did we?
No. This was, it must have been 2 years ago.
Because, I ended up going to France, to the Dordogne area in France, ironically less than a kilometer from where I shot my very first film called The Duelist. France in winter months down there is unbelievably green and damp and dark and beautiful. And those combinations definitely depressed me. So I was kind of depressed because I was living in a fucking castle, which was unbelievable. And we were making this film, which is, great. The whole experience was terrific, but there was this thing called COVID lurking in this romantically dark landscape. It was kind of spooky.
A most unspeakable charge has been brought against you.
Jacques Legris entered our home. He attacked me.
This should be settled quietly.
I'm innocent!
I request a duel to the death.
So Last Duel, that was during COVID?
Oh, fully.
Did you begin principal photography, then have to stop and then go back?
No, we'd begun, it was already happening. And we were running it like an army of, I had a small army of COVID watchers and minders. I had a schedule 5-6 weeks in the Dordogne, and then we had a natural break to go to Ireland. And COVID then was coming up like a monster. So I used the natural break to actually break for 2 months. In the 2 months, I edited everything I'd done and started to prepare Gucci.
All those fight sequences in The Last Duel, which I find to be just exquisite, man. That is not a COVID-friendly thing to shoot. How did you pull that off?
It is entirely outdoors, which is very helpful, right?
Okay.
And Matt and Adam were tested daily. I was tested daily. And
right.
But the battle sequences that I did, and I made the battle sequences very simple and short, because the battle sequences are purely to say what kind of monster this Carouge man was for a living. He was a fucking Viking who went to war to fight for the King of France because he was paid. And he needed the money because he was constantly living on the edge of bankruptcy. This is all a fact. And I found that to be great because Matt does love a punch-up, as you can see. So the punch-ups would make Matt formidable when the time would come to go to do the trial battle with Legris. So it was an investment in violence, right? But that's why I kept them short and tight.
And also the fact that what you said is, instead of it even, he keeps saying in the honor of the king, but you realize like, oh, this is his day job.
That's his day job. And Legris took another path of sidestepping that because he was so acceptable in court and charming and funny and amusing, and became the favorite of Ben's character, who was the closest man to the King of France. The King of France was the boy of France who was 18, who was a dysfunctional young man who had a condition. And it may have been a combination of Asperger and various other things, so he had no social graces. So that's why the king came across as eccentric, because that's what he was. So in essence, Ben was running the country for the king.
Only in retrospect do you realize that you were watching a piece of it in the perspective of Matt's character, but only when you switch to Adam Driver's. And I found that to be humorous, actually, in a very dark film.
Always look for humor, always.
Yeah.
But you do. You look
yes,
for humor.
I do. I do.
You're a great, dare I say, a great comedian. You are, truly.
Thank you.
And so looking for that, that's hard because it comes out of you very easily. It's part of your DNA.
But to do it structurally in the film, that that you're thinking back as an audience member when he, their first wedding night and Matt's character says, "No, it's okay," and you realize, oh, that's how he perceived it.
The real thing I've got to put between both of them, Adam's character and Jodie's character had to do a film, two scenes which were entirely differently seen by each character. So Adam saw it as being this Superman about town where women would fundamentally do his bidding, and whatever he said, the objections would be nominal and acceptable because after all, she's a lady, therefore she should object, but is nevertheless enjoying it, whatever's happening. And so you see a rape from the point of view of her point of view, which is completely violent. And then you see the rape from his point of view, where she protests a little, right? So that to me, I have to lay down before Jodie and of course, Adam. You know how difficult that to do a scene like that is, holy moly.
Oh yeah.
It's really tricky. And what was great is when you do something like that, when I get to a scene like that, there are no witnesses. In fact, I always clear the room. Everybody is out because I do work a 4-camera situation, and I work a 4-camera situation because it saves repetition, which fundamentally will capture any scene in a room, in a space. If it gets bigger, I'll do 6. If it gets huge, I'll do 11. You got to know where to put the cameras, but it means everything is constantly fresh. So you do it 4 times as opposed to 20 times.
So, for example, in that scene, you're saying there was 4 cameras. How were each one set up? What were they?
Well, to be graphic, she's on a bed, he's standing over her. So I've got 2 cameras behind her, on him, wide and tight, and I've got 2 cameras across him, on her. And when a camera gets in the way of each other, he says, "I can see the camera." Say, "Well, move out the fucking way and get out of his shot."
So they're on dollies.
Yeah. Well, you adjust. I mean, if I'm just missing a camera by 2 inches, that's it. It doesn't matter as long as I don't get him. If a camera today comes into shot by accident, you can remove that so easily digitally.
That's right.
But Adam was saying he loves the freedom that the 4 cameras give him. He'd never experienced that before. Continually puzzled about why people don't embrace that.
I mean, I certainly in a scene like that with 2 people talking, I don't understand why you don't do simultaneous coverage. You just take away the element of having to fabricate a moment that already occurred because it was a good moment, and it'll never happen. It'll never happen. And by the way, I love the 3/4 angle and then the tight down the barrel as a compliment. I think that's a great. I find that very pleasing as an audience member to watch it.
I'm neither film trained nor actor trained. And I noticed that it came about, my film school was television commercials. I did 2,500 commercials personally, but good ones like Steve Jobs' 1984 commercial, but a lot of dialogue commercials as well. And I always noticed we'd rehearse and the actor would usually nail it on take 1 and I wasn't turning. And that would drive me crazy. So I said, you know what? I'm going to roll on this. And we roll, and invariably it happens in take 1 or 2, and then and you know that you are the virtuoso of who you are, and they feel it when they got it, and you weren't turning. That drives me crazy, right?
No, it's like unforgivable.
You knew what would happen to me should you lose this duel.
God will not punish those who tell the truth.
My fate and our child's fate will be written not by God's will, by which old man will tire first.
So I was talking to my friend a couple of days ago, and I thought I want to ask you this, and with the fear of it not sounding ridiculously pretentious, but I, like you, I have a pretty crazy work ethic. I love it, right? And we've dedicated our lives to this. And I think, what the fuck, or what is it? Like what is it? And my friend said this thing very simply. He said it's all we're trying to do is explore the mysteries of the human experience. That's it. Yeah. That's all we're trying to do. And I when he said that, I said, yes, that actually is it. And I wanted to ask you, what does that resonate with you at all? What I just said?
you come at it from an entirely 180-degree angle because you come at it from a very accomplished actor and trained actor point of view. I came at it blind, fundamentally not knowing what I was doing because I was a designer. I was constantly disappointed with dealing with television directors who asked me to design a room like this, and they ended up doing a 2-shot in the corner of the room. And I'd say to them, listen, I don't mind doing a corner if providing that's all you need. Please don't have me design this huge room, which wastes money and time. And so the word got around and they came to me and said, do you want to train as a director might train? So we'll give you a 3-month BBC training course to make me a more senior designer. So I said, yes. So I suddenly got given a studio, a casting book, and a use of 6 cameras on a 1-day full rehearse and record to experience what it's like to direct live television. It fucking worked shockingly well. So I was hated by all the other students because I suddenly produced telecine with guys with rifles and shit. And they then offered me a show. And the show had been running 16 years called Zcars. And this guy, David Rose, I got to hand him to for his balls. He said, don't fuck it up. He gave me a script. You're on in 3 weeks. I had never done a camera plan before, and I was on live TV in 3 weeks.
And when you did that, how did you feel? Because clearly it ignited something in you to keep going.
I felt I'd been flying a 747 with an instruction book because, the gallery at BBC Centre is like massive room with 7 monitors above your head. One is live and all the other cameras are moving into the next position. So you got to lock on that one camera because everything else is refocusing and shifting in chaos. So it was like I'd got into a 747, was learning to take off. And I suddenly got an opportunity to direct celluloid with a television commercial. So I was offered to do this thing with Gerber's Baby Foods, where I had a little baby sitting there in a rocking chair doing this, and I was doing a Gerber Baby Food commercial. And I just loved the day, and the child didn't behave and spluttered porridge all over me, all that shit. But I thought, this is for me. And my next 20 years was doing television advertising. When I was 38, I suddenly realized, my God, I'm not going to do a film. I'll never do a movie. But I'd been so successful, I could now pay for a screenplay and afford to do a film for nothing. So simply developed The Duelists. I carried it around personally with me, finding a home at Paramount Pictures. That was Diller and Eisner. Not sure about that period piece. It was $800,000 for fuck's sake. Even for that, those days, it was nothing. Anyway, we got that made, and that was the beginning.
The last shot, well, not the last shot because it's the epilogue, but just the composition of Matt's character. You're on him. He's in the crowd on the horse, and you sort of see her. He keeps stacking his wife, right? And then you're his POV coming under that arch with just the sea of people. Then you go back over to him, and he does the Jesus thing when he heals the kid's head, and then you end on her, and it's a man's world. I mean, I just thought those compositions, that arch that you found, in wherever you shot that, the pitch of that arch of that bridge was so beautiful. Things like that just really stick with me all the time in all of your films. But do you remember seeing that bridge and thinking, that's that last shot, I want to do it there?
It's our job as a director to save, if you can, the resolution to the last moment. And so the last moment had to be on Jodie because even now she was being put to second position.
Of course.
And the hero was up front as this glorious monster. And therefore, we'd forgotten about what happens if there's a child. You don't know whose the child was. So the whole point of her ending on her and this kid.
As the epilogue, you mean? Yeah, after.
Yes,
right.
Her absolute abject delight. She doesn't care who child it is. She just loves the kid. That's it.
It's so funny. So I watched it with 3 other people and we all loved it. And we were talking about that epilogue. And to me, what I got from it was, how am I going to raise this boy who is under patriarchy? How can I unearth him from to being enfettered by patriarchy and everything that means? Everybody else went, wait, is that Adam Driver? this kid, I mean, I didn't feel that at all. And I thought, well, if you're going to go there, the kid has blonde hair, maybe he's the Earls. It doesn't matter.
That's the only thing she cares about. The kid forced me to behave. That was one take. The kid, I said, he's going to do this. The kid did. I went, wow, that's it. That was the last shot of the movie.
Wow.
Bradley, you took on a monumental task as a first film. Now, to me, the experience of starting the first day and the first time is less concerning because I'm so experienced, but also I'm so prepped. So were you incredibly nervous on that, even though you're such a practiced actor?
I wasn't nervous on the first day for the very reason of what you just said, because I was so prepped. I think I spent 2 years, a year and a half, not working on anything other than that movie prior to principal photography. That's what I meant when I said that, you know, right now, at least in my life, I only know how to do this by taking a lot of time. I saw the movie in my head. Now, of course, it changes. And I knew the story I wanted to tell deep down. And as long as you have that anchor, I find as long as that anchor is solid and 40 feet deep, that's the thing you can, you know, you're never untethered. As crazy as it gets, you're really never untethered. And there's a freedom in that. So I did not, I was terrified and prepped, terrified.
Do you listen to people or not when you're in the driving seat?
I listen to everybody.
You do? That's an error. I don't listen to anybody.
What I love about filmmaking is the collaborative aspect of it. I love it.
But, you know, as you get forward in doing more, I know you're already doing another one. So as you do more, I think I gradually consolidate my key team.
Oh, yeah.
And once that happens and you know each other, life goes much faster and much easier.
I'll wait 3 months for Scott Sakamoto to be available, the camera operator. Like Mango, Dolly Grip, it's like Mike Bauman, Steve Morrow. It's like, no, I can only make the movie with this crew, period.
Yeah. You need friends around you when you do that, so you have to explain less.
And you want people that have a like-minded and you know that they're the shit at what they do, quite frankly.
You're so accomplished. So you can watch an actor and you can tell probably if they're nervous or if they're confident. And do you know when to let up and let them run?
I benefit from having a deep love of people. I mean, I find everybody interesting. So I don't have to work at finding something interesting about somebody I'm working with. I could see it. And then it's just about, there's nothing more beautiful than the human soul expressing itself organically. I mean, the reason why Anthony Perkins' performance in Psycho is transcendent is because he was doing something real in that very structured film. And I think if you look back at all the performances of movies that were stuck in a genre that shouldn't be transcendent, it's performances, it's the truth that transcends and has the biggest half-life.
My biggest problem for me when I began was how the fuck I'm going to talk to the actor, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I'd watch it take happening, and my biggest tension was, this seems to be going really well. Should I say something at the end of it and move on? So I didn't know ever what to, and I learned pretty late to refine my process.
And what is that process? What would you say? What is your process?
I'm a good caster. My investment is casting, because I know I'm vulnerable in the area of actors even now. And if I cast well, I'm going to be helped along and become a partner of the actor in those character roles. And so it's never Svengali, it's what do you think, right?
The other thing is like just honesty. It's like we both respect each other. We're all trying to do the same thing. We just speak openly and honestly with love, and that's it. There's just no bullshit. It's like, I don't need to make you feel good. You don't need to make me feel good. How do we get this job done?
If you get that out the way early on, you're a lucky man. I was way too polite for too many years.
Gucci. They had it all. Wealth, style, power. Who wouldn't care for that?
These two subject matters, one of The Last Duel and Gucci. Wow. Let's talk about choice of material.
I'm a very difficult person to be an agent for, because I'm so random. I'm like a child in a playpen thinking, oh, I like this bottle because it's purple, or I like this because it's silver and it glitters. And so there's no plan.
No, I'm right there with you.
Janina, who you know, my wife,
Yeah.
has actually produced 4 movies. So she'd found this book.
This is Gucci you were talking about now.
How's it good? Yeah. And so what do you think of this? And I said, well, it's kind of an interesting story because it's funny enough, it sounded like a version of the Borgia or the Medici, 15th, 16th century family that actually literally tore each other apart from the inside out. And to transpose that into the 21st century was very interesting. Also, the background is always fascinating. Anything like fashion world it appeals to my sense as wanting to be a fashion photographer. So I knew a little bit about that. I thought this is kind of interesting, but we couldn't get a script. And so Janina carried this for 20 years on, honestly, 4 or 5 writers. And then finally, we met this young guy called Roberto Bentivini, and he was Italian. His mother was in fashion. Cut long story short, he came up with a script, I think within about 6 weeks or something. And Janina read it, and I read it. I went, am I imagining, or did he just nail it? I think what he nailed was the tone, because you can't separate the characters from what they do and from their wealth. It's all to do with that process. And he somehow got the linear, interwoven storylines together, and somehow it all made sense. And so I said, I'll do this.
Gucci needs new blood. It's time to take out the trash.
They're my family.
So am I.
Adam's line in it when he says, I'm not a monster, I'm a Gucci. That's a great line.
Yes. And that's why I went to Stefania because of what I saw in the film you did with her. And I thought, there's my gal, and met with her. And that's where it began.
I found her to be somebody very inspirational. Her ideas, the level of truth she brings to everything, and just, again, work ethic.
Yeah, to me, I cast very carefully and well. So when you've got Stefania, you've got Al Pacino, you've got Jared Leto, you've got Jeremy Irons. They all know they're kind of vying for position, but not competitively. It's organically really pleasing to see her play with Jared Leto in his atelier. She's actually persuading him that they may back him in his line. And of course, she's already manipulating at that point. But I think the layering of the adjustment through the 3 acts was so marvelous. And I think that we would define the moment where we felt the cracks start to happen as the story unfolded. And what I always like to do is to any actor say, listen, at the end of this scene, what do you hope to come out with? What are we learning having done this scene? How does this catapult you forward into the next scene? Because that's called dynamics, right? It's not car crashes and jumping off buildings and shit like that. It's information which become dynamic, right? And to me, I think that's the key of writing, that a screenplay should literally read as a dynamic, and it may have no action in it at all.
What would you say you learned from both of those movies that you just did that you're going to take to this next project that you're going to do, which is also very exciting?
It enables me to feel even more confident with actors.
That's a big one, Ridley. That's a big one.
Al is the man who loves, 40 takes.
Oh, really?
He'll deny it, but he bloody does. And he said to me, yeah, I hear you, Dad. He's so funny. He said, you do 4 cameras. I've heard you do 4 cameras a day. He said, well, I like to do it more than twice. I said, fine. I said, you will always decide. So we do the scene with 4 cameras, and it never stopped. It wasn't take 1, right, cut, come around, take. That doesn't work. And so Al was doing the scenes, and they were evolving like miniature plays.
Right.
I said,
right.
That's it. And he went, that's it. I said, yeah, do you want to go again? He went, not really. I said, very good. But you know what's wonderful about him? He will go off piste. He can't resist ad-libbing. So he goes off ad-libbing. I go, oh God. But there are rosebuds dropping from his lips every now and again. So I just let him run. And then during it, I said, I'll come back on take. And he just came back.
That must have been unique having Adam in Last Duel and then in House of Gucci.
We trusted each other on the Last Duel. It's not a spoken thing, it's intuitive. And I think he liked
He's so impressive, Ridley. He's so impressive. Wow.
I know.
What
And
an actor.
And then he does that guy, and then he does this guy. And, you know, in his performance, he suddenly is 21. There's no makeup. There's a wig, and that's about it. I think he's fitting on a suit of armor. I said, I've got a script for you to read this weekend. He said, what? I said, I want you to read the script this weekend. He said, all right. So I had him before we finished the movie.
Wow. Well, that must have been a vote of confidence for him if the directors ask him to be in his next movie. That must have felt good.
Well, he just fits the role, apart from the fact he's just fucking great. He's also 6'4". So you got Maurizio Gucci, 6'4", and you've got Patricia Gucci, who is 5'2" or 3". So the yin and yang of it is
the visual composition is like stellar.
It's good if you can get that.
Yeah, it's
Sometimes
incredible.
you can't get that, but it's great if you can, because she's always doing that, and he's always doing that.
It's amazing.
And I love it when he says, "Don't call me a cretin, sweetie," and she says, "I didn't call you a cretin. I said don't act like a cretin." Already she's vulnerable. Then he says, "It's my family." He said, "So am I," and points at the ring. So you got two massive cracks right there.
Yeah,
that's the beginning of the end.
Our name.
And that dinner conversation at the chalet, she shows up and he's just completely like a different person. Yeah.
She goes straight for the blonde. She knows who the problem is.
Jeremy Irons, had you worked with him before?
Kingdom of Heaven. He can ride a horse. He hates it when I say that. He's a good rider. And he just loves to be on horseback.
I thought he was wonderful in your film. I thought he was just wonderful. Wonderful. I worked with him on a small movie called The Word years ago. Man, I just love that guy. Wow. There's so many wonderful moments in House of Gucci. Is there one that stands out with you and Stephanie?
The moment I thought, my God, she closed it up. She closed it. And that was a scene of the schoolyard where the children's sports are happening. And Jack Houston turns up in his Porsche to inform her that he's proposing divorce. She lost it so well and so real that I felt it had to be reflected of something that had happened to her, because it definitely hurt her. And from that moment, I was watching her, I felt, my God, she just owns it.
Yeah, and even as an actor, I've experienced that where you go, there's certain scene occurs and you went, oh, you just drop into this place and now it's like, oh, we're there. We're just there now.
There's nothing to be said. I think that was one take. And I always would go to anyone, but I was saying, I think you just did it, don't you? She said, yes, I just did it. That was it.
For me, with working with her, I remember the thing that blew my mind that seems simple, but I thought it was a tall order, is when my character brings Allie, the character she plays, on stage for the first time. I truly believe that person had never been on a stage before. And I remember thinking, how is she pulling this off? That I actually believe on every level, as the director, as the character, that this person has never been in front of 20,000 people before.
Yeah.
That was really kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, but you know, to yourself, the hardest thing to do is play a rock star. You absolutely did it, man. You pulled that off brilliantly.
Oh, thank you. I agree. It was not easy, but yes, thank you. I'm really proud of that film. That was a wonderful experience. Total segue. Bladerunner, last scene on the roof, Rutger Hauer. Number one, the dub and everything he says. Was that in the script? Was that all?
No. Much isn't in lots of scripts. I always use a script as a total benchmark. And if I can get the blueprint right, then of course it's wonderful, but it enables me then to start branching out, doing lots of things. And so the dove, I'm going to get fired at 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm going to pull the plug. So this is the last night, definitively, because it wasn't a happy shoot. And yet I knew I was doing something very special. They didn't. At 1 a.m., we're having dinner, and somebody said, Rutger wants to talk to you. I'm going, oh, fuck. So I then wander over to Rutger's trail, and Rutger's sitting there saying, I have written something. Rutger, please, no. And he said, no, listen. And he said, this poetry I said, what the fuck is that? Is that Keats? He said, no, it's me. So he wrote that last speech. And then it preluded Hampton Fancher's line, "Time to Die," which I always thought was a beautiful line.
Because it's 3 times, right? It's the first one is the hand, right? It says "time to live," right? And then it's throughout the movie, right? And then "time
Let
to
the
die."
bird go. Yeah. There's a lot of invention on that one. And I think Rutger and Harry, Sean, a lot of great characters in it.
Oh, just incredible.
Yeah, it still stands up, still modern.
Oh, it sure does. Oh, it sure. I must have seen. Yeah, that film is just unbelievable.
When you're shooting?
May 26th we start.
I'll keep my fingers crossed. I start on January the 15th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that one. I can't
All
wait
right,
for
man.
that one.
And me too.